Hey, and Mr. Moresco has arrived. Hey, Bobby, how are you?
All right, how we doing, Caroline? How are
Good.
you?
It's been a long I was thinking about this. It's been like 2004, 2005 maybe since we left. Maybe about five,
Something like that.
something like that since we've seen each other. You look exactly the same. Just want to
I feel the same. It's crazy, but I do.
say, right?
So do you. You look great.
Me too. It's good to see
Hello,
you.
everybody.
So everybody say hello.
Hello, Al.
This is Mr. Bobby Moresco here to chat with us today. Super excited. And yeah, so if you
How
can,
many do we have?
can you see the chat?
How many do we have out there?
So
I,
far we've got about 30 and they're just kind of rolling in. They'll continue to roll in throughout probably. So hey, Randy and Alan and
I tell
Scott.
you what, I'm going to take a minute while people are rolling in. I'm going to give you 5 minutes and I'll come back.
Perfect. Sounds good.
Thank
How we
you.
roll.
Thank you.
All right, man. Everybody's that's what I get. So I was joking that they better behave. And now the quiet's like the chat's very quiet. Totally fine, you guys. Let her rip. It's all good.
Please don't behave for me. I've never learned how to do that either.
Don't do that, whatever you do. So funny. It's really good. So this group is a group of people that are, a lot of them are writers, but we are, as you know, I've been a reader for decades, and we have been very passionately teaching them the reading process of how to read and analyze screenplays, and then do it in a way that supports a writer and also is like a support system for producers. So we're trying to get readers to be far more like developing writers, pushing writers forward, inspiring writers to the next draft, as opposed to critiquing and beating them down. So we're trying to flip that and like really train people to that end. So just so you know kind of what the group's about. And then also teaching them all about the producing process so that they can really be a support system so a producer can really rely on them. So that's what our mission is here. That's what we're doing. And these people are super fun, super smart, super excited to be part of that whole process and part of, coming here and listening to you. We've had Paul Haggis came in not that long ago, and we've had like a lot of different producers, sometimes writers. We have people come in and kind of share their stories as well, inspire everybody.
Great.
So that's the deal. Let me know if you have any questions. Moving on, and we're just kind of, I think I said.
I was curious. When you're not on Zoom, where are you guys located?
We're always on Zoom. We have a course that they go through on a platform called Thinkific, and it outlines, it's very detailed, and it outlines, I also have a degree in drama, I don't know if you knew that, so it outlines and I produced a lot of theater, so it outlines how to work in theater as well as acting and all of that. So we have a really succinct course. We also have like a writer's room where if they are writers, they can submit their script and they can cover each other's scripts. We've had a few scripts or one script option that way, which is really cool. And then we have a Facebook group too. So we kind of chat in there as well. We're all over the place.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
Great.
so that's basically how it works. So everybody's always first question is, so how did you get your start? Because everybody's always interested in, the origin story of how a writer gets their work out there and gets started. So I know the answer.
Well, I mean, I'm happy to tell you how I started, but the truth of the matter is it doesn't matter. We all start our own way. Each and every one of us, we find our own way. I was born and raised in New York City, on the west side of Manhattan. The neighborhood was called Hell's Kitchen. A lot of Irish mobsters and cops and construction workers and longshoremen. And that wasn't a life that I wanted to do. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And then one day some guy said to me, hey, you should be an actor. And he gave me the name of an acting teacher. And I was lost. I had just quit school. So I went over to this acting teacher, and it turned out to be one of the world's great acting teachers, a guy named Win Hanman. Win founded the American Place Theater. And because of this recommendation from this guy, this writer, he was a writer on the old show, The Untouchables, Win took me into his class. I found something that I hadn't had before, which is the kind of life where you could learn something new every day. You could learn something different about people, learn something different about yourself. As I said, I left school, so I didn't have a big education. So the theater gave me an education. It showed me where to go. It led me to reading poets and poetry and Shakespeare and plays, and then eventually screenplays and teleplays. And so I tried working as an actor for about 10 or 12 years, maybe 13. I even moved to Los Angeles with my wife and daughter. And after 10 or 12 years, maybe I made $1,000 or $2,000, over the whole period of time. And I was having a second child, living in Los Angeles. My wife was having a second child. And I was either faced with quitting acting altogether because I wasn't going anywhere, or stay in the business somehow and do something else. And I decided to open a theater company and create work myself that I could act in, write in, direct. And that theater company is called the Actors Gym. That was 1978 or so. And I still have it today. There's been many, many productions. There's been Oscar-winning movies and Emmy-winning television shows and Broadway shows that come out of it. But it really began with me either quitting or creating my own work, because those were the only two choices. And that's, I did that for 10 or 15 years, and eventually somebody read a screenplay of mine that I had written based on a play that I had written, and got produced in New York. And I got my first screenplay job with Warner Brothers based on a play that I had written. And then I got my first television show in 1995, about 26 years after I first started. And that was my first real paycheck.
I love it.
26 years later.
I love it too. How
so
you
I did good. I was quick.
You were fast track, the 20-year fast track. It's really good. Exactly. But the thing is, the way you're saying, there's only two choices. Like, it was like, the other things just weren't an option. We often we joke about it, but it's so true that it chooses you. You don't choose it. It's like you were chosen to stick this out, and so you did, and you just kept figuring it out until you found a way. Actors Gym is well known and still so respected, and everyone talks about it all the time. So it's such a great story.
I don't know about this idea of being chosen. Writing, acting, directing is really hard. And if you can do something else and be happy, you should go do that. There's no guarantees. But for me, it was the only thing that made me happy. I didn't care about other stuff. And so I was a bartender, I was a construction worker, supporting my family, or a cab driver. And writing, acting, directing is what I loved. And if it's what you love, whether it chooses you or you choose it,
right, then
you're kind of foolish to turn your back on it.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's what I mean by that. It's just this constant pull. And so if you're just miserable no matter where you go, and that's just constantly pulling you, then go with the pull. It's like,
listen. Either if you love it. You guys sit there at night, when you're all alone. Either you love it or you don't, and you really know. And if you don't waste any more time on it. Go do something else that makes you happy. But if it's the only thing that can make you happy and it's worth the struggle, it's a great friggin' life when it works out.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's so many other, I love the reading thing too, because there's so many other ways that you can be involved. And this has been so gratifying, helping writers kind of, give them some support when they don't have it, and being in that position has been really, really gratifying in so many ways. So many ways it could go, and so many things you can do. When did you first get involved with the Whitefire Theater? Was that recent, or is that, because that's been around for a long time?
No, the Whitefire, I moved back to New York in 1983. I lived there for about 10 years. I came back out to LA in 93, 94, something like that. Then I got that television show I spoke about. And then we lost the theater. We were working the Actors Gym. I always kept the Actors Gym one night a week. No matter how busy I was or not busy, I always kept the theater company, because that was my lifeblood to the work. You show up on Monday night, people bring in work, you get a chance to talk about it, you get a chance to share your ideas, you get a chance to direct. And so the Elephant Theater in Hollywood closed down about 2001 or so. And we went over to the Whitefire, because I bought a house in Toluca Lake. At that point, I was doing pretty well. And I went over to the Whitefire, introduced myself, and Brian said, come on in, the owner.
That's great. Whitefire is the very first theater I had my first acting class in. It's still going really strong. And I know that they're, with COVID, they've been reaching out, and I'm kind of on their list and watching their progress and what's going on there. It's just a staple.
They're doing well. They had a little tough time, but they're doing okay.
They're hanging in there.
Meanwhile, are we boring you guys stiff? You guys got questions? What are we doing here?
So what's the difference when you're going to write something between writing for, what are the main differences between writing for stage, television, or movies? What are kind of the nuances that you would say? Or do you have a favorite, or do you have any kind of thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I haven't written a full-length play in 30 years. Now, there's a reason for that, because that's really hard to write a full-length play. You know, that's you and the paper and nobody else. And when I didn't know anything about screenwriting, or nobody would offer me a job, that was all I knew was playwriting. And so the thing about playwriting also is it's really tough to make a living in theater. You know, it's hard to make a living. I mean, I directed 3 plays in New York City in the last year and a half. And if I wasn't doing well otherwise, I wouldn't be able to live. And that's 3 plays off Broadway, which is how people make their money. So it's really hard to exist in theater. But the theatrical medium is the playwright's medium. That's what we all must know. He's the boss. The playwright's, he's the one that runs and guns in the theater. In film, it's the director. In TV, it's more often than not the writer. And sometimes in film, it's also the actor, but mostly the director. So those are the big things. That, you know, the engine pushing the work in theater is always the writer. The engine pushing the work in television is always the writer. And then in film, it's the director or actor. Does that make sense, guys?
Yeah, absolutely.
And of course, in theater, it's the actor as well. In theater, it's the writer and actor. I mean, because after the writer walks away, it's just the actor's left on stage, baby. And it ain't the easiest thing in the world to deliver.
There's this thing that happens with actors in theater where it's like the word is the word and you don't change it. And it's like you say what's on the page. Whereas in film, at least in the experience that I've had, it's been that more loose about what's on the page, and writers are replaced much more often. But there is that thing of like, you can't, your word is golden in the theater, but you're not making much money. And writers are constantly replaced in film, but they're making money. So it's very interesting in that regard.
That's why theater's a writer's medium. And, you know, it's not even just the thing. It's it's written into the bylines of the Dramatists Guild. If the writer doesn't want you to change the line, you are not allowed to change the line. It doesn't matter who you are or how big an actor you are. In TV and movies, the writer writes a script, he gets paid and walks away. They never see him again, very often, unless he's the showrunner. And then it's the writer's medium.
Was that a difficult shift for you? To go from that
no, and I'll tell you why. My first job in television was a producer on a show with Paul Haggis called Easy Streets. And Paul took me under his wing and taught me everything it was to know. So when I left that show, I knew how to run a show because Paul taught me. So
yeah, I was wondering where you guys
it was just like directing.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
That's awesome. I was wondering I wasn't sure where the two of you met. I knew that he started the same thing. And we often also talk about there's this myth that you have to know someone to break in, and your story and his story are both like, no, you didn't. You just, kept at it and kept on it, kept working at it.
Well, listen, guys, there's one lesson that you take away from this. When I was working in construction in New York, and I was about 36, I was working in construction because I had 2 kids, and I would be writing at my little theater at night. And I wrote this screenplay based on the play I just told you guys about. And I come home from work filthy, dirty. I had a little tiny desk in a small bedroom in an apartment in New York. And but I got this script done. I had a screenplay based on my play. And Paul Haggis, 7 years later, was given that screenplay by somebody I didn't even know. And somehow he had read my screenplay and gave it to Paul. And Paul hired me for my first job as a producer in television. Now, what's the moral of the story? The moral of the story is you take the action. I wrote that script. I didn't sit on my butt waiting for somebody to give me a job. I didn't say, hey, I'm working in construction all day long. I'm too tired to write. That's not the deal. The deal is you go home and you work. You don't know when it's going to pay off, but that's the only thing that pays off is you taking the initiative. If you're going to sit around and wait for somebody to give you a job, it's going to be a long wait. And I didn't count on Paul Haggis or anybody else reading that script. I went and then I directed some other thing in the theater.
Well, the fact that it took a while for him to find it too. People think that it's like, and a lot of people write one thing and they cling to that thing and they walk around and that's their baby and they're not going to do anything until that thing gets done. But it's not. You just have to keep churning it out and keep figuring it out. And something that you wrote could come back around. And so such a beautiful example of that. So good.
Yeah. You don't stop. I'm happy to give you an example. First of all, you don't stop rewriting until you can't make it any better. All right. And then when you're done rewriting and you know that it's there, you know that it's the best you have to offer, If you have an agent or a manager, get them to send it out. It's a really cool thing. Or get anybody to read it that you know that might be helpful. And then write something else right away. Don't sit and pray for that one script. It will, it's a death that will take you 1,000 years to get through. You don't want that. All right. You've written that screenplay. It's behind you. It's the best you had to offer. Write something else, or go direct something, or produce something.
What is one of the processes or whatever that you have to keep you writing? I remember like years ago when I interviewed you, I was interviewing you and you got interrupted while we were doing this interview like dozens of times. And I was like, how do you get anything done? And you were like, right? So it's like, so what are some of the, I don't know, processes or whatever that you have that gets your things done? Like getting it actually.
Talking to myself. You mean how do I mobilize my energies?
Yeah. How do you make sure that you get pages done, and what is your process to kind of getting it done? That seems to be something that people ask me.
My process is really simple. I remember what it was like working in construction, 30 floors up in the freezing cold, and I liked writing better. I'm serious. It's that simple, man. If you get lucky enough to do what you love and somebody's got to tell you to go right, you ain't the smartest person in the world.
So true.
I had spent 25 years painting houses, finding cabs, tending bar, working in construction. I knew I was lucky, all right? But in terms of this idea that what's the process of getting to your desk, if somebody tells you there's such a thing as writer's block, they are full of baloney. There is only unless they have a serious depression issue psychologically, then it's another issue. All right, I'm not talking about health-wise. I'm just talking about this idea that I can't think of anything. All right, that's what's called bullshit. If you're a writer, if you're a professional, you go to your desk, you set aside 3 hours. And for 3 hours, I will sit at my desk, I will look at my characters, I will look at my story, and I won't leave this desk until something comes. And I promise you, if you sit at that desk for that long, you'll get an idea. Writer's block will no longer exist. But instead, most people walk over, they sit down and say, I can't think of anything, go have a coffee. Go talk to their friends, make a few phone calls, check Facebook.
Right. Do the laundry.
If you live in your world, ideas will come. Maybe not even good ideas, but bad ideas lead to good ideas.
Yeah, just get something on the page. Something.
Get something on the page, this idea that, by the way, if you're working in TV and, deadlines every other day or the day after, there's a story due, there's an outline due, there's a script due. And if you don't show up, there's no such thing as, well, I couldn't think of it. If you don't show up, you're fired that day. Go get another writer. If you think somebody's going to pamper you in the real world, you're crazy. Nobody's going to say to you, oh, I'm sorry you didn't have an idea. Take another shot.
It's a really good point. So you guys, can you hear that? Because a lot of people say, well, I can't do it now because I have this full-time job of, some job that you hate. I can't do it. And you think that once you get that deal, well, then I'll just be able to write because I will be a writer then. It will be, but it's the same exact thing. You're going to have these deadlines and these things, coming down on you. So it doesn't really matter. It's just about, getting your butt in the chair, doing it. Absolutely.
Here's the only thing that's true. If you're a writer, every single day, there are going to be a minimum of 100 legitimate reasons for you not to write. Totally legitimate for you not to write. And the only question is, will you take them or will you write? That's up to you guys. I had my own needs. I never wanted to go back to construction. You have to have somebody that pushes you and say, maybe it's simply enough that you care so much about writing that you refuse to be distracted. I don't know. That's up to you guys.
Yeah. And
but I know one thing, there are no excuses.
Yeah, it's totally individual, yet it comes down to a very similar thing for everybody. You have to find your own way there, but it's the same story for everything. Absolutely.
Yeah, look, if a guy works driving a cab, right? You think that he can show up one day and say to his boss, I didn't come in yesterday because it wasn't in me to drive. You think that's going to happen? That ain't going to happen. You think somebody's going to, miss a bartending shift because he didn't feel like bartending that night? Either you're a professional or you're not. And it doesn't matter if you're getting paid. I just told you I worked 3 off-Broadway plays this year. I directed last year and a half. I work exactly the same on an off-Broadway play where I get little or no money as I do when I get a lot of money for a movie. There's no difference. And if it's about money, you're in the wrong business.
Totally. So it's a really good trip because you and Paul have very similar work ethics and very similar, straight ahead work regardless, you know, if you're a writer, you're a construction worker, or whatever it might be, you have the same kind of work ethic where you're diving in there and you're not motivated to be a construction worker. So you're doing writing and it's working and you're just working on it. So as you guys came together, like everyone always loves to hear the story about what was it like with Crash and getting nominated and that whole whirlwind of all of that. Like, what was that like for you? All of that.
Well, I mean, I don't think anybody's ever going to say to you, you know, winning an Oscar, it ain't such a big deal. Don't bother. You know, that ain't going to happen. You know, it's this idea, if you grow up like I did with movies and loving them and sitting and watching the Oscars when you're a kid every year in some little apartment with your mom, and your mom says to you one day, you know, that's going to be you one day. And then one day it is you. That's surreal. That's nothing that someone can quantify or even talk about, really. It's everybody says it's surreal because it is surreal. Nobody expects it to happen to them. And believe me, if there's somebody out there expecting it to happen to them, it ain't going to happen to them, because they're thinking about that instead of the work that they're supposed to be doing in order to get there.
Really?
So listen, it's a great thing to go through. I mean, when I won the Oscar that night, about 50 of my friends from Hell's Kitchen came out, and we all spent the time together, and we all went down to Palm Springs for a week. These are 50 of my friends who watched me struggle for 26 years and loaned me money and helped me through those tough times. So, I mean, you can't buy that experience. So yeah, it's the most magnificent thing ever. And then on a business level, for the first time in your life, people are calling you. You're not calling them for work. Suddenly you're getting all offers. Before that, you know, you have an agent saying, you know, I have this idea, see if you can go get an agent, or, I mean, see if you can get a producer or somebody to pay me for the script, or maybe make the script. And it's always a struggle. When you win an Oscar for about 6 or 7 years, all that changes. And you start making more money than you ever dreamed possible. And then one day, they forget all about you because somebody else just won an Oscar. And he's getting all that stuff. And then you go back to work for a living. Mm-hmm. But for a while, it's really fun.
Yeah. So someone's saying, I want to know, Ed's saying, I want to know what the day after winning the Oscar is like. Very specific question about it.
The day after winning the Oscar is, honestly, it's hard to come up with a better word than surreal.
Yeah.
It's not, you know, I mean, when we got nominated, I never thought we'd win. When we won for the screenplay, I never thought we'd win the movie. When we won for the movie, I never thought that this could ever happen to me. And the next day, you know, my friends, my wife, we all went down to Palm Springs, and I celebrated not for a day, but for a week with all my old friends. And an Oscar that we took around to every restaurant in Palm Springs, like the Stanley Cup.
Fun. So it's like Stanley Cup. That's awesome.
It's a big celebration, and it's a great thing. You know, I never worked for an Oscar. I never even once considered I could ever win an Oscar. It was never a part of my psyche. Yeah. And then when we started getting nominated, you don't pay much attention to it because you just don't expect it. I didn't write a note or anything like that. Yeah. You know, it's just a great joy and a surprise, and then you move on. You know, if somebody thinks that you're going to become a better writer because you got an Oscar, that don't happen. It's the same thing. Please sit up at the desk, sit with your story and your characters. Because if you start saying, I got an Oscar now, I don't have to do the work anymore, you're dead. You
still have a blank page facing you the next time you sit down. So yeah, definitely have to figure that out. So as you move forward
I have the Oscar right behind me now, but for years I did not have it in the room where I work because I didn't want to be bothered, thinking about that silliness, Now I don't care, so it's behind me.
Yeah, I can see where it's a journey of kind of figuring that out, of like, what to do with all that energy, because it is really interesting. And I have several friends that have won Oscars and gone through that, and it is interesting how their life changes for a while, and then it's still, all of them just go right back to work because that's what got them there in the first place. So it is really, really interesting. Yeah. So when you're moving forward and looking for projects, are you looking, like, do you sort of let see where things take you, or do you like actively say, I want to do a play now, and now I want to work in television, now I think I'll do, or are you just kind of seeing what things come up and where the work takes you?
It's always a little bit different. Sometimes a project is brought to me. Very often a project will be brought to me because it's a script that doesn't work. And everybody knows that I like to direct. And so they'll say to me, hey, well, you fix the script and you can direct the movie. That's how they get a writer on board who can fix the script. A lot of that happens, and I don't take most of them because there's a reason they need me to rewrite it. It's not very good. And so why do I want to direct something that's not going to be good? Or if I'm going to put all that work in to make it good, why not do it with my own idea? So most of the time I don't take those jobs. Often people will call me and say, what do you want to do next? And I'll say, well, I have this idea. And then a producer will jump on board and suddenly, and by the way, I try not to now, you guys can't do this, but I try not to write a project these days without a producer on board who's going to go get me the money, because it takes so long and it's so hard to write a screenplay. And when you're done, to have to go out at my age, to go out and raise the money like I did when I was a kid, I don't want to do that anymore. So that's me, that's not you guys. But if there is some producer who has the ability to get your movie made and you like him or her, then it's a really good idea to get a producer on board with you to help share the load to get the movie done. Somebody called me yesterday, had a book they wanted me to read. I get a lot of articles from newspapers. People send me articles. But to be honest, I usually just come up with my own ideas. And then right now I've got 4 or 5 movie projects in the works and 1 or 2 television pilots. The writing is pretty much done with all of them. And so I go out and I'll direct a play because I want to keep busy while I'm waiting for the money and the actors and everything else to come together. So that's how I did the last 3 plays. I had time in between projects, and it's either stay busy or.
What were those plays? Tell us a little bit about the plays.
Sure. The first one was, do you guys, how many people know who Colin Quinn is, the comedian, the Irish comedian?
Yeah.
Anybody?
Yeah.
You know Colin from Saturday Night Live? Colin is an old friend. I directed him on Broadway in 1997 in a play. And Colin had an idea for a new play, and he knew I had just moved back to New York, and he called me and asked me if I wanted to direct his new play. And I did, and we directed it at the Cherry Lane Theater in New York. I directed it, and then it was bought for a television special by Netflix and, believe it or not, CNN. CNN's first comedy special ever. And if you guys are interested in seeing Colin Quinn, who's great in a piece on television on Netflix, it's called Red State, Blue State. I directed, Colin wrote it and starring in it. Red State, Blue State. Anybody see it? Any of you know Colin?
No.
I'm looking at all your faces. None of you are moving.
I know, right now, just riveted. I don't see it in the chat. Let us know in the chat too, you guys, if this is, if you guys have seen Red State, Blue State. Definitely, I'll check it out for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Now I only see one person.
Yeah. Ed said he thought it was amazing. Yeah. A couple of people. Oh, Christy. Yeah. Now they're coming in. Takes a second. Awesome. Yeah. Cool.
I don't see. All I see is you and Christina.
Oh, right. So we have, because we have it recording. So if you have it, there's a little up in the corner, you can see gallery view or speaker view. If you turn it to gallery view, you'll be able to see everybody.
No, I'm on gallery view and it's not there.
Oh, you don't have, some people don't have that. And I'm not sure why. I just discovered that. So for us, when we click on gallery view, it shows everybody. Or if you have speaker view.
I've got all their names, but not their photos. Do they have their video on?
Yeah, they have.
Hey, there's Heather. Hello, Heather.
There you got one person.
And there's Pamela.
There you go.
Hello,
So good. So when
so a lot of people they're not putting their video on. There's
yes,
Elizabeth. Hello, Elizabeth. Are you allowed to say hello back?
Yeah, sure.
Nice
Like they just unmute themselves.
Nice to meet you.
So
The strangest thing.
so good. So so I'm getting a couple different questions about the writing process in terms of, do you start with an outline and how do you determine what genre you want to write in? Do you have a way of determining that? And then, what is your process in that regard in terms of, do you start with an outline, or if you want to pick something?
Say the first part of it again.
So the writing process in terms of, do you start with an outline and then work from there? Do you just write from scratch, or does it does it vary from project to project? And then somebody else wanted to know, like, how do you pick a genre or figure out what genre you want to write in, or if there's a process that you have for that?
Yeah, I mean, I never think about, I never thought about genre until lately. I always look for a great story and great characters. If you got a great story, you got great characters, and there's an idea driving it, and usually you get that idea from the story. That's enough for me. And then recently, I've realized that I've never done a horror movie, like something like The Exorcist, some classic horror movie.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm now actively searching for a good horror movie because I've never done it, and I'd like to try it. But normally I don't look at genre. In terms of the process, I would suspect, guys, you'd be really well served to just soak yourself up in the world. Keep a tape recorder with you. You know, I read everything I can about a subject. I think about it all day long. When me and Haggis wrote the movie Crash, we talked about race relations for about a year. And we read books and books and books. And we talked to all of our friends of different ethnicities. And then it was so in us, by the time we wrote the script in 10 days. So, you know, if it's in you, then it's time to start writing. But to sit down and just start struggling through the process without really soaking yourself up in the world, that's kind of nuts. But once you've soaked yourself up in the world, you've talked about your characters, you've thought about your big idea, which is the reason to make the movie. You thought about the story. Hopefully you got some sense of a beginning, middle, and an end, just some general thing in the top of your head, back of your head. At that point, I usually do an outline, or I put up 3x5 cards, and I don't know what's gonna, pardon me, guys. I don't know what's gonna come first. I don't try to sit down and say, what's the first scene? You know, I'll be thinking, you know, as I did all that research, I probably thought of some great, wonderful scene that kicks off Act 3. So I'll put that card up in Act 3. And maybe I thought about an opening, and I put that card up there. And then, you know, another scene where a character has to do something with another character, or if it's a theft, okay, this is the job. You know, I wrote a movie with Todd Field, the Academy Award nominated director, and it was a heist movie. And the whole first 20 minutes was the setup, and then the heist was the next 15 minutes. So for 35 minutes, it was just that. So you don't have to think about that stuff. But then within that, there's all the character stuff and all the dangers and the scares. But when you start putting up cards, little by little, the story comes to, you stare at it. Yeah, I could use a scene over there. And then you start thinking more and more in terms of the beginning, middle, and end. And what are the dramatic conflicts? Who are your characters? And most importantly, what's in the way? You know, here's what most people do not do. They come up with a lead, let's just say, a main character who has a need. Everybody understands that a main character has to have a need. He's driven, he's giving a journey. You know, some people call it the hero's journey, like Joseph Campbell, you know, and he'll refuse it and he won't refuse it, then he'll go. But the part that's missing is what's in the way, what has to be overcome. And when you find out what has to be overcome, and if it's too easy, you have no character and you have no story. So you have to build in the complications. You have to build in the things that your main character has to do in order to get what he or she wants. Then you begin to have drama. Does that make sense? And that's the thing that everybody forgets. Everybody forgets they're so busy on putting in the needs and what he wants that they get there too quickly and there's no journey and we don't care. It's all about the journey, and what's in the way becomes the way. For instance, I'll tell you what I mean by that. I wish I could see all you guys so that if I say something like, what's in the way becomes the way, and if I look at total confusion, I know I need to say that over again. So but none of the screens are moving. I'm not seeing any life beyond these screens. Why is that?
I'm not sure what you're seeing, so I can't see your view. So if you guys are comfortable, turn your cameras on if you feel comfortable. I think that would help. If you feel comfortable doing that so he can see you.
Who, me?
No, the other people. Your camera's on. So if someone is sitting and watching and you don't have your camera on, it's because I think maybe you're just seeing, we do have some people have their camera on and some people don't. We have quite a few that have their camera
on. But all of them are frozen. All of them are frozen. Nobody is moving.
Oh, that's why. So I think you're having some connectivity issues on your end. So you might not, I think your streaming might not be strong enough to see everybody maybe. Because people are you guys seeing, I'm not having any trouble. Like I hear it fine, he's not. So every once in a while, you might be having
I do a Zoom session every week with the Actors Studio, and sometimes there are 50 people there. I never have a problem.
That's weird.
So this is odd.
This is odd.
should I get out and get back in? Should I try that?
Try that if you want. Sure. That's fine.
Let's see what happens.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, Billy.
So Carolyn, I'm back and I can now hear everyone.
Awesome. Cool.
Yay.
So can you see everybody too? Everybody wave.
Hello, everybody. I can.
Look at that.
Hi, welcome back.
So good.
Welcome back.
Thank you. I
We're
felt like
glad
I was
you're back.
talking to a brick wall.
Sorry, man. I didn't realize what you were seeing.
All right. So that's okay. Now it's a lot better. I'm talking to people.
So now
my
you
point
people
was,
in.
listen, William Goldman said in a book called Ventures in the Screen Trade a long time ago, he said, in Hollywood, nobody knows anything. There was nothing more true ever. I know it worked for me. It doesn't mean it's going to work for you. That's the only thing I know. What worked for me. You take it, and if something helps, great. If it doesn't help, throw it away and find your own way. But I will tell you, when I say something like, what's in the way becomes the way, somebody tell me what I mean by that. Anybody? Come on, guys. What's in the way becomes the way.
Because that's the path forward.
What?
That's the
Go
path
ahead.
forward.
Well, what does it mean that's the path forward? What's in the way becomes the way. That becomes the conflict. That becomes the story.
Yes.
I'll give you. So if you figure out what's in the way, you realize, oh my God, that's the next 20 pages of my story. I'll give you, for instance. There's a show called The Black Darlings that me and Haggis created. Anybody ever see The Black Darlings?
Yeah.
Any of you? All right. So if you saw The Darlings, at the end of it, there were four brothers who had to leave Manhattan, their neighborhood, because they were facing danger and they might be killed, and the whole family had to get out at once. And me and Haggis were sitting up, putting up a board, having an idea, trying this, trying that. How are they going to escape it? And somebody finally said, one of the writers said, this is ridiculous. They don't even have a car. And the whole first 2 acts, the whole first 3 acts becomes about getting a car in order to get out.
Well, that's
So one person said, and if you watch the finale, you can get it on YouTube. The whole thing is about getting the car to get out. And even the finale is about the car. So that's a perfect example of what's in the way becomes the way. And that comes from talking out your story, talking it out. And somebody says one thing, you go, that's it. Make sense? Great. All right. What the hell do you want to talk about next? Oh,
So
right.
we have a couple of different questions that are similar, and one is that for those of people that are in here that are fledgling producers, how can they best help a writer develop their story, which is exactly the same thing as a reader. So how can producers and also readers who support writers, like how can we best help a writer develop their story? How can we be that support system? So if you're a producer working with a writer, or you're a reader working with a writer, or you're trying to help them get that story, but you're not the one actually writing it. Do you have any like pet peeves, do's and don'ts, or that kind of thing that would help support writers to get their story?
Two things. I didn't hear everything you said, but I have another question. How come these people who have these questions are not asking me themselves?
I don't know. Well,
Well,
that's just typically how we do it, but we can definitely do it. So it was Ashna. Right. I'm going to unmute you.
Where is he?
I'm right here. Can you
Where?
see me?
It's a she.
Shouldn't she pop up on the screen?
Yeah, she should. So say something, Ashna.
Can you hear me?
There you are. How are you?
Hello, I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
I'm okay. So what's your name?
It's Ashna.
Hello, Ashna. So what's your question? What do you want to talk about?
I wanted to know, I'm an aspiring producer. So as a producer, how best do you think can somebody in that position help you when you're doing your writing or developing a project?
When you
What
say
are some
that
do's and
position-
don'ts?
When you say that position, you mean a producerial position?
Yes.
Well, as I said a moment ago, a producer saves me from going out and trying to find the money, saves me from going out and trying to find the studio, saves me from having to find a casting director to give me a list of actors who I want to, producer does everything that the writer-director does not have the time to do, or is he equipped to do. A good producer will set everything up, just take control and leave the writer and director, or the writer-director if it's one of them, to do the work. and they lean on each other tremendously. I'm doing a project now with a man named Jonathan Sanger, who has a couple of Oscars. He's a really good guy. And, he went and found me a casting director. He went and found the financier to back offers. And those of you who want to make movies know this. If you're going to get an actor, you want to be able to say to the actor, we have the money to do this. That means some financier is going to back an offer. If you can't do that, then you have to have a producer who's has enough clout to get him to read it without the money so you can use his name to go get the money. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So you, as a producer, you want to do everything possible to help some writer director get a script off the ground, a great script. If it's not a great script, don't waste your time. Good producers recognize a movie that can get made and has something to say. And not always the same thing. Does that make sense?
That does. Thank you very much.
Okay. And the last thing you should do is you should get in touch with a great line producer. Now, you need a line producer. Can you tell me?
I'm sorry, you broke
producer.
up.
Why do you need a line producer? That's what you should, as a producer, you need a line producer.
Is that
You
because
know
they
what?
do all the day-to-day tasks, like on the ground?
Well, the first two, no, yeah, they do all of that. But in the beginning, when you're trying to get your movie made, the first thing a studio or a financier is going to want to know is how much is the movie going to cost, how many days you're going to shoot it in, and where are you going to shoot it, and how much money will I save on taxes. A line producer will put together what's called a board and budget. He'll tell you how many days you need to shoot it. And then when you want a star who's going to take all your money from your budget, you want to try to use him as little as possible. So maybe you got a movie that's going to take 5 weeks to shoot. You don't want to have to pay the star, unless he's in every scene, all 5 weeks. You want a line producer to set up a board that says, I can shoot my star out in 3 weeks, I can save $200,000 a week there, and take that money to make the rest of the movie. Does that make sense?
Yes, that was really
So
good.
go
Thank
find
you.
yourself a good line producer. First find a great story, then find a good line producer, then find a financier, then find actors, then go make your movie.
Got it.
Okay, Christina, why don't you
Okay.
unmute yourself? Wave and unmute yourself. Christina, you had a great question about
I'm
readers.
sorry.
Yes, hi. Thank you for being here today.
You Sally?
Can you see her?
Hi, Sally.
No, it's
me.
Christina.
Okay.
Hi. Thank you for being here today. This is very educational for all of us. My question is, as a reader, how can we best support you as a producer, director, writer? What do you want from us to help you do your job better?
The first thing I want from you is complete and utter honesty. Okay? I don't want you to try to be smart. I don't want me to show you what a good writer you are. I don't want you to tell me how bad the other writer is. Okay? I want you to be really good at your job, and that means this. Is there a story there? And if there is a story and the script isn't particularly well written, what needs to be done to get it to a place if I want to consider directing it? And if it doesn't work at all, and it's not worth my consideration, show me why. Show me why in a clear, concise way that doesn't belittle the writer who wrote the script, but simply says, here's why the script doesn't work for this reader, and here's why. If you were to do this movie, you would have to consider, I think, a page 1 rewrite, or to take a strong look at Acts 2 and 3 because it's a good opening. Just be clear, just be honest. Don't try to impress anybody. Impress them with your knowledge of the story you just wrote. Impart that knowledge to me and let me make my own decision.
Woo!
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you so much, because that's what we say all the time. You just backed us up. Thank you so much. That was awesome.
I picked you up on that.
That couldn't have been more perfect. This is so great. So Simone, you had some questions there about how do you keep your script? I'm not exactly sure what you mean. Can you describe a little bit more what you mean, Simone?
Okay, I'm gonna go up and look at my questions because I have a whole lot of questions.
How do you
Hello,
keep
Simone.
your script?
Because Crash
Hi,
has,
Simone. How are you?
I am so good. Crash literally changed my life, so I'm trying to compose myself.
Thank you.
Let's see. One of the questions I know I had was, I have a script. We already registered it with the WGA West. So my friend is going to be like an actor on it. So my question is, like, you were saying that we should wait to get the actors and get the line producer first, but if we can package it with an actor, or with a higher echelon actor, if we can get them to say yes, will that help it further along in the process?
How much is the budget of your movie?
That we don't know yet. We just found the location, so we're trying to figure
Is it a
out.
feature or short?
It is a feature thriller / horror movie.
Okay. Well, then it sounds to me like there are always two choices. The first is, do I want to make my movie and just go find as much money as I need to make the movie and not have to worry about going to get an actor or get the money? Okay, it sounds to me you'd want to do the first one, not the second one. All right. So I would say to you, it doesn't matter who's in the movie. All right, just go raise the money and go shoot the movie. All right, because if you're going to get, now I'm going to jump. I'm going to tell you how independent movies are made, like Crash and like $1 Million Baby. They were both independent films. Guy writes a script. He finds a financier who's ready to make offers. At that point, he's looked at a budget. Crash was $6.5 million. Our financier said, okay, in order for me to make sure that I don't lose any money, I need to sell foreign territories in Germany, in in England, in Italy, in Spain, all those foreign territories, and I need to guarantee that I get my $6.5 million back. Otherwise, I'm not giving it. How am I going to guarantee that? By getting name actors that will sell the movie in those territories before the movie is made.
Okay.
Do you understand?
Yeah.
Okay, so the most difficult thing in that process is get those actors who know that they're worth a lot of money to read your script and agree to do it.
Okay.
I wouldn't do that if I were you. You're making your first movie. You've got a nice idea, it sounds like. Cast your friend. Are you directing or what are you doing?
We wrote it together, so we want to be creative directors. I have a friend who wants to do line producing, so we'll probably put her on that. And then the reason why I was saying I would try to get the high echelon actress is because my friend is working with her already. So we're trying to figure out how we can get it to her without being, the weird people that slide into people's DMs with scripts. We're just trying to figure it out.
Until you've got, it's been my experience that, until you've got somewhat of a track record or a brilliant script that's truly brilliant, that nobody can ever turn down, it's going to be really hard to have some actor read it without it having come through his agent or through his mother.
Okay.
His mother can't always get him to read it.
Okay.
Okay? That makes sense?
Yes. Yeah.
My advice to you, go make that nice small movie and use it as a calling card for your next movie and then go get a big actor. You can say to a big actor then, look at what we did with no money.
Okay.
Make sense?
Definitely. Thank you.
Good. You're very welcome.
And then
Good luck with it.
Sally, did you want to ask your question? And that's kind of the last one I'm seeing, unless I've missed one. I think I got everybody. Let me know if I didn't.
Am I muted?
Put your no. I think it's Sally, the other Sally. I think. I'm just guessing by the question, but wait, I lost the question now. It was how. Oh, maybe it is you. Any advice to a writer who's older to get in their screenplay sold? Is that you, Sally? Yeah, it's you. Sorry.
That's me.
Good. Cool. Awesome.
Can you hear me? I can't tell.
You're terrible.
Can you hear me?
I'm
I'm at work, and see if I can go into some place that's a little more quiet. I'm at work, so I'm doing this on the fly. But I've always wanted to do this, but I had to, become a grown-up and have kids, and now I want to do it, and I don't know how to begin, and I don't know how to live like a college student again. So any advice on moving things along a little bit? I don't even know where to begin. I don't even know what to ask you.
So you're saying for someone who wants to start their career later in their life, any advice for that?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Start it.
Yeah.
All right, so start it. Where do you live?
Just move to LA and try to network?
No, I want to know where you live now.
Right now I live in Philadelphia. And
right,
I
and
work
fill it
at I work at a regular job doing, the regular kind of life. And I hate what I'm doing because what I always wanted to do is make films and tell stories. And now I want to break in, and I have absolutely no idea how. It's sort of terrifying.
So the first thing I would suggest to you is, did you hear the story I said before about working in construction and coming home at night, sitting at a little desk and forcing myself over a year and a half to write that screenplay? So my first suggestion is to you, find a story. By the way, you want to write movies, television shows, plays? What do you want to write?
Movies. I'm working on one that has been in my head since I was in college, and it's now starting to come out all the time. So that's what I'm working on all the time.
Fantastic. Well, that's a great thing. So just keep writing until you've got that movie written. And then when it's written and you're happy with it, and I would suggest Philadelphia is filled with a lot of good actors. There are theater companies everywhere. Find a good theater company, get some actors, and hear it read. Hear it read aloud with actors. And that's not hard to do. It's a lot easier than you think. And let's make sure that you're not being blind to what problems the script might have. Let the actors talk. Let the audience talk, and find out if you've really got a great one. And if you have a great one that has problems, fix the problems. All right. And then at some point, you will either have a script that works or it doesn't. And at that point, you have to go through every single person you know and get somebody to read it, or get some financier, or do what that other girl was doing. Forgive me, I forgot her name, Simone. I said to Simone, just go make the movie for $1.52. Do whatever it takes to do it if you love it, but don't give up your job. If you're a mother, don't give up being a mother. You can do both. I did both for 26 years until this broke through. I was ready to do it both for my whole life. I now have 2 grown children with their own children, but back then they were kids. You take it on. If you love it, you'll get past it. Write the screenplay. Spend as much time as possible reading books on screenplays. Make sure you have a story that's really worthwhile. You know the best way to find out, this is for all of you, the best way to find out before you start writing and you start putting up your cards, right, scene here, scene there, try to tell somebody your movie from start to finish. See if they're interested. And if you can't tell them the movie and keep them interested, you'll never be able to write it. So try to say, here's what you walk out of a movie theater, right? And somebody says to you, hey, did you just see that movie? And yeah. I said, what was it about? And you begin to tell them the whole story from beginning to end. Do that with your movie. And if you can't do it with your movie, you may not have a story. And if you can do it, go write that story. Does that make sense?
I also just want to throw a cherry on top of that, Sally, is, gosh, where might you find a reader? You're already here, honey. You're here, and you can use this group to your advantage. You already have what it takes to write all the elements of a story is in the course. Go through the course and just keep at it and come to the sessions every week, and we'll help you work through it. You're good.
Sally, I fear that you're looking for an easy answer. I promise you there aren't any. You got to do the same thing everybody else does.
No, I'm just worried about once it's finished, then what? And that's what I keep thinking is, then what?
Well, once it's finished, I spoke to this before. Once it's finished, you get it to as many people who might have a connection as possible, and then you go write another story, because a writer writes. A writer doesn't wait, a writer writes. So get it done, make sure it's the best you have to offer, get it to every single person who might know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody who might have a nickel for your movie, or an agent, or a manager. I mean, there are enough of them out there. I promise you, you'll know somebody who can badger somebody into reading it. That's what every person in your position does. And that's what you need to do. Nobody's going to open a door for you, I promise you. And if you're going to be scared of what you well, it's just not going to happen. I'm sorry. If somebody's telling you that there's an easy way, or somebody telling you there's some sort of guarantee, no guarantees. Yeah.
That's pretty much why I haven't done it. So that's why it's been in my head and not on paper.
Well, then stop telling yourself you can't do it and start doing it. Here's what I said a moment ago. Put up a board, 3x5 card. What's a scene that might be in the movie? and put it up. Does it feel like it's in the beginning? Does it feel like it's in the middle or at the end? Then put up another scene. And pretty soon you'll have 5, 10, 15 scenes that are shaping out a story that was in your head, but now it's on the board. That make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. That's very helpful.
So
Yeah,
good.
okay,
Yeah.
I hope so.
It is.
So why don't we just we'll do Rachel. I think that's about it. We've kept you for, I was only planning to keep you for half an hour. You're so generous. Thank you for this. So many people have more questions than I thought they would. So we've got one more. Let's do Rachel. It's an interesting concept. So Rachel with Rachel Berg, where are you?
Yeah.
Wave and unmute yourself and say hello so he can see you.
Hi. Can you see me?
That's not Rachel, that's Sally.
Now, Rachel, say something. You have to speak, and then when you speak, your screen pops up. So say something.
Oh, I was trying to. Can you hear me now?
I can see you and I can hear you, Rachel. How are you?
Hi. Hi. Thanks for doing this. Like ever.
Sure. Happy to help.
Yeah. So I guess my question is, I just finished writing a book, which I need to figure out how to publish. And then I also am taking this course to be a screen reader, but I also would love to act. But I live in a tiny little town where I kind of don't have a lot of options of being able to do anything. I was just curious, is there a thing that
Where do you live?
huh?
Where do you live?
It's called the Hunta, Colorado. It's like super tiny. I live in the desert of Colorado.
Okay, are there colleges there or universities with theater departments?
I've done theater just at the community at a community theater. But I mean, it's so tiny, it doesn't mean anything. I have like a community college, and then everything else, like Colorado Springs is like 2 hours away, Denver's 3 hours away, that kind of stuff. But I guess my question was like, should I try to focus on just getting my book out or focus on this? And then, once all of that stuff, like, and I start getting connections, then try to go into the others, or should I keep doing what I'm doing and try to do all three?
No, first of all, congratulations on writing a book. It's an accomplishment. God bless.
Thanks.
So,
I don't know if it's good, but thank you.
Is the book ready to be read? Have other people read it and gave you feedback and said, I'm caught up here. This is a book that's worth publishing?
No, not yet. That's actually what I need to do next. I just finished editing.
Okay, so I tell you why I ask. Because very often we don't see the flaws in our own work. It takes somebody with an outside eye, somebody to step in with a fresh look and say, you're after something really good here, but here's some issues. Because if you don't do that first and you get it to the publishers first and they see all those flaws, they're not going to be kind enough to say, hey, what about this? So get the what about this stuff out of the way first.
Okay.
All right. If you spend all that time writing a book, I would do that. I would get some opinions from 3, 4, 5 people who you trust and love, who have good taste, and let them tell you what their thoughts are. Tell them to be honest with you. They don't let them hurt your feelings. Don't ask them to say nice things. Ask them to say honest things.
Yeah.
And if at that point you feel like there's some more work to do the work on the book. And if you feel like it's there, then start getting it to publishers or self-publish, whatever is the best way to go. One of the movies I have in development was a self-published book that a mother and 3 children going through the opioid crisis together. 2 teenagers, a 20-year-old and the mother. And this woman wrote her memoirs and had it self-published. An actress by the name of Leslie Ann Warren. You know Leslie Ann, you guys? She's won an Academy Award nomination for. Anyway, you look her up. Leslie Ann read the book, and she's perfect for the mother, she felt. And Leslie Ann called me and asked me if I would read the book and get involved as a writer-director. I read the book, and I decided to get involved. Now, that's a self-published book. We're out casting that movie now. I found a financier, all the things I told you guys to do, I did. I found a line producer, I have a board, I have a budget, and we're casting the movie. So self-published books can get done also into movies if it finds a voice out there, or it has one person reads it. I would concentrate on the book as much as possible. And if you truly are done, then start thinking about what's next in terms of your process, in terms of what you need to do to grow as a human being and as an artist.
And keep in mind, Rachel and everyone, that's why we have the writer's room. You can email it to me and I'll put it in the writer's room, and then anyone can read it and give you an actual coverage on it and give you feedback that way. So that way your fellow readers can get some practice and you can get some feedback, and it will be beautifully done. So that's always an option for anyone. If you have a script or something, it doesn't matter what can be a book, short, play, doesn't matter for the writer's room. That's totally open, doesn't matter. So just let me know if you want to do that.
So,
Okay, thanks.
Karen, I got time for 1 or 2 more, and then I got to run.
Okay, cool.
So
does anybody else have, Ritika, do you want to go ahead and give yours? So say something and wave so we can see you. And
Hey,
then,
Bobby. Can you see me?
Hello, how are you?
How are you? Thank you for spending this time with us, and thank you, Carolyn. You know, I have a client, and I read a script for her earlier this year, and she is at retirement age. So the question she has was, and I know this is going to mean a lot to her, is I recently read, this is what the question was. I recently read and advised on a script for a woman close to retirement, yet has a strong passion to fulfill her screenwriting dream. She is worried about her age and how Hollywood may or may not welcome her. What is the best advice for people looking to bring their work into Hollywood who are elderly age group and be taken seriously?
Well, that's first of all, a great question. And second of all, Hollywood does not care how old you are. Here's what they care about. They care about 3 things. They care about a great story, they care about money, and they care about connections. Okay, and you're the same as everybody else, and it doesn't matter how old you are. So the first thing is it a great story? And if it's a great story, it doesn't matter who you are or how old you are. It's just not important. They don't care. Okay. Money they care about, and there are 2 ways to look at how they care about money. The first is, can they make money with this story? Is it commercially viable? Or does this script come with money that can get the movie made, and I can jump on its back and get my own money out of it? So if it's good enough, and this woman has a great story, and if she's in this position to bring in financiers for first money, here's what first money is. First money is to get the project off the ground. And very often somebody will come in and they'll put 100 or 200,000 up for first monies to get the project going, to hire a line producer, to get a board and budget. But I promise you, that's not worth doing unless you really have done the work and it's a story that can get out there. I mean, to start spending money on a script without a great story is a complete waste of time. And the only way you know you have a great story is if you get it to people who are really good at what they do, and they come back and say, this is brilliant. You can go out, you can get actors with this. Then it's worth putting a little money in, getting seed money, getting a board, getting a budget, hiring a casting director, trying to get actors attached, all that stuff. But nobody cares how old you are or that you haven't been attached. Those are the things they care about. And it all starts with a great story, with great characters. A great story with great characters.
Perfect.
well, I would
Thank
say
you.
that is the perfect question to end on, because that is what we are constantly saying. It's about story, 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 story. And when you're wondering what it's about story. And these other elements definitely play a part. But if you have a great story, you have a great story, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter.
Fantastic.
Anything. So yeah, so thank you so much. There's been so many times where you just totally backed us up. I really appreciate that, in terms of like just talking about the process and just keep writing, and it's not rocket science. It's just grit. It's really a lot of it.
It's digging ditches, baby. Writing, digging ditches. Go out and dig some ditches. Hey, goodbye, everybody. It was nice talking to all of you.
Yeah, thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
So generous. Thank you so much, Bobby.
Thank you
It's
so
really
much.
lovely.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Good luck.
Thank you.
Good luck, everyone.
This
Good
was
luck.
wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think you popped off, right? Okay, so was that great or what? I thought I'd go ahead and just keep going if you guys had any more questions that you want to talk about, or anything, about anything, since we just kind of this free forum going on. But is he the greatest or what? He's so generous. Yeah, right. Cool.
He's so awesome.